Titan Fitness. You either love them or you hate them. I haven't really met a lot of people with opinions somewhere in between there. But in reality, if you're a budget-minded consumer building a home gym, Titan is an option that you can't ignore. And when I was building my home gym, I was definitely budget-minded. And when I started looking at racks and seeing how much racks from companies like Rogue and Elite FTS and Sorinex cost, I found out quickly that I could either buy a rack and nothing else, or I could explore options like Titan and buy a rack and still have room in the budget to buy the rest of the things that I needed for my home gym. Well, that's how I ended up with the Titan Fitness X-3 Power Rack in my home gym. And that purchase decision was almost 3 years ago. So with 3 years of training on the X-3 rack, it's time to do a review. Tell you the things that I like, the things that I love, and the things that I wish were different. And answer a very important question. Would I buy the Titan X-3 again? One of the biggest challenges that we face when we're putting together our home gyms is that there are very few places, if any, depending on where you live, to go try this stuff out. There's no place to go try different racks before you buy them. There's very few places to go try a bunch of different barbells before you order one. And that means that in a lot of cases, people are flying blind. They're relying on online reviews and YouTube reviews and things like Gymcrafter, this channel, to help them make their decision and spend their money wisely. And when I put my home gym together, I was in the same boat. But what I decided is I didn't want to spend, honestly, more than I spent on my first car on stuff without trying it. So I took some extra steps. I bought day passes to CrossFit boxes. I bought day passes to commercial gyms. I went to friends' houses. I went to used equipment stores and I tried the things that they had on display there. I got asked to stop doing pull-ups on a power rack in Dick's Sporting Goods. I really wanted to try this stuff before I bought it. And the reason for that was, especially when it came to power racks, there was such a variance in price. I mean, there were 2x2 upright power racks that were only a few $100s. There were Rogue and Sorinex and Elite FTS racks that cost thousands and thousands of dollars. And that's where Titan came in. On paper, they looked great, right? I mean, the specs of the racks are right there with much more expensive racks by other companies. But the price points were much lower. And that told me that I really wanted to go see one in person before I bought it. I had to see where was the price difference coming from. So I was fortunate enough to find a couple people who own Titan racks. And what I realized through talking to them was that there's really only 3 things you need a rack to do. You need it to hold your barbell in the right position to do certain lifts, right? Like if you want to squat, you need something to hold the bar up so you can get under. So that's thing number 1 you need your rack to do. The second thing you need your rack to do is you need it to keep you safe, right? If you're gonna do those types of movements at home alone in a garage or basement gym, you need something that's gonna keep you safe and catch that bar on safeties. And the third thing that you need a rack to do is you need a place to attach accessories that allow you to do other things. Pull-up bar is a great example. You know, that's where I do all my pull-ups, is on the pull-up bar on my rack. So keeping that in mind, that those are really the 3 things that I needed my rack to do, what I saw when I tried the Titan racks was they did those things well. So before we get into the actual review, I want to address real quickly 2 quick things that you'll hear a lot of people talk about Titan racks. Number 1, they're made in China. If you don't want something made in China, don't buy a Titan rack. Obviously, it wasn't a deciding factor for me. The second thing is that Titan racks and Titan equipment on the whole sometimes isn't the prettiest thing in the world, right? It doesn't have a lot of color options. They can't get color coordinated hardware. It doesn't have as nice a powder coat. Some of the welds are not the prettiest things in the world, but it's functional. And for me, when I bought my rack, I needed it to be functional. I needed it to serve a purpose of those 3 things that I mentioned earlier in the video. And while it would be very cool to have a rack that's in the green colors of the Gymcrafter logo and the hardware offset the posts and I could get, different colors, and that would all be awesome. But when I built my gym, that just wasn't in the budget. So yeah, it's not the prettiest rack in the world, but that's not why I bought it, to be pretty. I bought it to do a job, and that's what I want this review to focus on. Did the Titan Fitness do the job that I bought it to do? So Titan makes a lot of racks. So why the X3? Why this particular rack? Well, when I was buying my rack, there were a few things that I knew that I wanted. Number 1, I wanted 3x3 uprights. That was really important. I also wanted 11 gauge steel. What that means is that the rack is going to be very heavy on its own. This particular rack comes in at about 296 pounds. But one of the ways people try and save money on racks is they'll go with 2x2 uprights, or they'll go with racks that are made from a thinner gauge steel. And what that means is that your rack ends up not being all that stable. Even when you weight it down with plate storage, it's not stable. And when we talk about the 3 functions of a rack, one of those is to safely hold your bar. If you're working on a 2x2 rack that doesn't weigh very much, what you're gonna see is that that rack's gonna wobble or kind of move or shift when you re-rack your weight. And that's not something that I wanted to happen. You know, you can be off by just a little bit. If you need to get out of a lift and you're trying to get your bar back onto the J-hooks, you need it to be stable. And so the best way to do that is to buy a rack that's got some weight to it. The 300-pound 3x3 11 gauge construction of this Titan rack is exactly what I wanted for those specific reasons. The second thing that I wanted what's called a flat foot rack. Now when you look at racks by a lot of companies, what you'll soon find is that they've got these feet on them with holes, and those companies expect you to bolt that rack to the ground. And if you can do that, great. A lot of people, they'll build a platform, for example, and they'll bolt that rack down to that platform, or some people will bolt it to their garage floor. But for me, and I know a lot of people out there are like this, I'm not gonna do that. So that meant I needed a different solution. That's where the flat foot rack comes in. So when you combine the weight and construction of this rack with the flat foot design, which is basically designed to sit on a floor without being bolted down and still be stable, I have a rack that is solid. I don't store weights on it, and it's still solid. So that's why I went with this particular rack from Titan, the 3x3 construction and the flat foot design. Now this particular rack comes in a short and a tall. This one is the tall design because I've got plenty of height in here in the gym, but that's why I went with the X-3. Now let's take a look at what are the things that I ended up really loving about this rack. When it comes to the things I love about this rack, I have to mention that flat foot design again. To me, that's a game changer. When you look at racks by other companies, now Rogue makes a nice flat foot in their Monster Light line, so if you're a Rogue customer, they do make that option, and if you're not gonna bolt your rack down, regardless of where you get your rack from, you need to address that in some way, shape, or form. Companies like Rep Fitness don't have a flat foot design, but instead they have stabilizer feet that go in the front and the back of their racks if you're not gonna bolt it down. Whatever you do, make sure if you're not gonna bolt your rack down, you're not gonna build a lifting platform to bolt it to, then make sure that you get the right kind of rack. And I love this flat foot design. It's simple, it's easy, and unlike the feet that you'll see on the Rep racks, they don't stick out real far and get in the way, and I've got limited space in the garage. So I absolutely love that flat foot design. The second thing that I love about my Rogue rack is the build quality. It's built like a tank. Now, like I mentioned before, the welds aren't as pretty as they would be on some other racks, but they're secure and they're safe and they're stable, and this thing is just rock solid. And that's what I really like. When I was out trying the different racks, one of the things I noticed about the big difference between the 3x3 premium racks and then the budget racks that a lot of people had bought on Amazon, or they bought them at their local sporting goods store, is the stability of the rack. This thing, it doesn't move. It's rock solid and it keeps me safe, and I feel safe lifting inside of it. And for me, that's really, really important. So that's another thing I love. The third thing I love about this rack, and let's be honest, was the price. I was on a budget when I was building my gym, and I literally bought my rack, my bench, and my first barbell for as much as it would have cost me to get the comparable rack from Rogue shipped to my house. There was just no comparison. I couldn't see any reasonable reason to spend that much more on another rack for color options or shinier powder coating or the fact that it was made in the US. Again, I understand that stuff's important to some people, but for me, I got 3 things for the price of 1. So I really love the price, and the value of this particular rack just can't be beat. One of the things I really like about this rack is the 1/2-inch hole spacing through the benching area of the rack. A lot of higher end racks with 1-inch holes, those 1-inch holes are so big you can't get this 1/2-inch hole spacing. So when it comes to set up your J-hooks for the bench press, you're limited into the adjustability that you have. For me, I love and use all the time the 1/2-inch increments, both in the J-hooks and in the safety straps to get those things in exactly the right place for the movement that I'm doing. You know, if I'm setting up for a slightly incline or slightly decline press, being able to move those things a ½ inch at a time is a real nice feature. You'll find that feature on a lot of racks. That's not exclusive to the Titan racks, but it's something that I do like about this rack. Another thing that I like about the Titan is that there's a lot of accessories. Not only do Rogue accessories fit on the Titan, but even within the Titan family, there's a ton of accessories. I mean, if you go on their website, there's page after page after page of rack accessories that can be mounted to this rack. So there's no shortage of things that you can add on. And when you start looking at the price difference of those accessories versus more expensive racks, not only are those other companies' racks more expensive to buy the rack itself, when you start adding accessories like this multi-grip pull-up bar, you're spending almost exponentially more money once you add in the accessories. So I like the variety of accessories that are available. I also like the price point of the accessories that are available. For me, I also like the looks. I kind of look at this as kind of an old, beat up muscle car. It doesn't have the shiniest coat of paint on it. It's not the coolest colors in the world, although matte black, kind of hard to beat matte black. I think even if I have color choices, I probably would pick matte black. But it's like that old muscle car. It's just, it gets the job done, and it's just kind of gritty, and I love coming in and training on it. I actually really like how the Titan rack looks. A couple other things that I liked about it, I like that it ships for free. I mean, when you look at racks on almost any other site, you're already kind of sticker shocked at what the rack costs to begin with, and then you put it in your cart and you see $200, $300, $400, $500 in shipping added to your order. Titan ships for free. Now, quality of that shipping is one of the things I wish was better. When this showed up, there was some box damage. So one of the big knocks that you hear on Titan is that they don't pack their stuff all that well. So I wanted to kind of show you guys how it arrived. And for the most part, it looks like it's packed really well. Everything's in. It doesn't look like there's any rips or holes. I can tell you that the end of this box over here looks a little bit beat up. And then the end of this box definitely has seen better days. The top of one of the uprights was scraped up a little bit. Actually, the top of two of the uprights were scraped up a little bit. I wasn't missing anything. When I called Titan, they definitely gave me a couple of options to remedy that I was very happy with. So, good company to work with. I can't say that about some of the other higher end companies even. These blemishes are cosmetic. They're not functional. The rack is in great shape. It works great. Everything's straight. Nothing's bent. It's just some scrapes on the end of it. No big deal. And it kind of adds to that gritty look that I was talking about before. The last thing that I'll mention that I really like about the rack is how it's held up. I mentioned that this is a review being done after over 2 years of heavy use of the rack, and it's held up really nicely. Yes, some of the spots of the powder coat have rubbed off where I've consistently put J-hooks on and off and on and off and on and off. The places where I most commonly put the safeties have the same issues. But that's going to be true of any powder coat. I can't stress that enough. I see sometimes people online will knock Titan because the powder coating wore off over time. I got news for you. Even the best powder coating in the world, when you've got metal on metal just rubbing back and forth all day long, it's going to rub off no matter what. So I think overall this has held up great. It hasn't fallen apart, it hasn't gotten loose, it hasn't started to wobble, nothing's bent, nothing's broken. Everything is in as good a shape other than the cosmetic look of it as the day that I got it. So I really like how it's held up. I have no qualms about recommending this rack to somebody else when it comes to how will it last over time. Now, with all that said, there are a couple of things that I wish were different. I already mentioned the shipping and the packing quality. And the other thing that turned out to be the biggest headache when buying a Titan rack is that they're never in stock. I'm going to put a link below in the description to this rack, but odds are, most of the time when you click that link, you're going to end up having to put your name on a waiting list so that they email you when they came in. In fact, when I bought this rack, it was about a 6-week wait between the time I decided that this was the rack that I wanted and the time that the rack was actually available to purchase. So my suggestion is, if you know that you want a Titan rack or a Titan product, get your name on that waiting list right away, or check back on a daily basis, or subscribe. They're great at sending out email newsletters of letting you know what's in stock. But that's something that I wish was different, and that's happened with not just the rack, as a couple other times when I've decided I wanted something. And as you probably know, when you decide it's time to spend the money, you want the product, right? You kind of want it quick. You don't want to wait 6 weeks just to order it. But so that was something else that I wish was different. Other than that, I'm really happy with the purchase. And quite honestly, the question that I think is really important when people review stuff is you have to ask, would you buy this again? And if I was in the same situation with the same budgetary constraints, yeah, I would buy this in a heartbeat. This is the rack I would buy if you're somebody who's looking to get a secure, stable, well-built rack that's gonna keep you safe, keep your barbell in position, has lots of accessories available, but isn't gonna break the bank. Yeah, this is the rack to get. Now that said, if I was in a different position, yeah, I might buy something different just to try it out. Both Rogue and Rep, for example, Elite FTS, Sorinex, Ghost Strong's making some crazy expensive but really super cool racks. Yeah, you could definitely, that's worth money to you, for sure, look at those. But again, in the value category, if you just look at buying a rack for the 3 things it's supposed to do, hold your bar in the right place, keep you safe, and be a place to bolt on accessories and have some accessories available, man, you can't beat this Titan X3 for the price. Well, that's all I've got for today. Hopefully that was a thorough enough review to answer any questions you have, but if you have more questions, you have any particulars that I left out that you'd like to know about, leave them down below in the comments. I always check the comments and I always respond. So let me know what questions you have on the Titan rack. And until next time, I'm Tim with Gym Crafter.